Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another stream. We're going to start with this ace queen off hand. If any of you have any questions at all throughout the stream, then just let me know. I've got 4 hands to go through. Don't know why I'm doing this, just to help the audioly impaired. So let's go straight into it. Ace queen off here. We go for a raise from the low jack. We have 52 bigs. We get flatted by the hijack, who has around 30 bigs. And we are going to play a single raised heads up pot, low jack versus hijack. So I often like to think about these spots as exactly that. So essentially 30 bigs, low jack versus hijack. What is my overall strategy in this spot? And my strategy here is to do lots of checking because I don't think this is a particularly good board for me. So I think there's this sort of common mistake that I see a lot of low stakes players make, is that they'll bet their best hands and their best draws here, which tends to be flush draws, maybe some 8-7 suited. And then they will, 1 second, and then they will just check a lot of other stuff, right? And I think the problem is you're just going to have a lot of other stuff that then when you face a float, which is what Poker Tracker classes as a float. Like basically it's a bet after miss C bet, bet in position after miss C bet. I think that's what it's called in Hold'em Manager 3 or 2. So yeah, you're just going to have too much and then you're not going to have anything to continue. So I just do a lot of checking here. I think the equity is going to run pretty close together. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And in terms of strong hands here, like 2 pair plus, I think the imposition player is going to have way more of that as a proportion of their range. Maybe we have the same number of combos, but I think that they are going to have, it's going to make up a bigger portion of their range. So that's something else to really look at. So yeah, anytime that you're approaching spots like this, I think it's good to just take your cards away for a minute and just think about what's the overall strategy. Shout out to Denzo Poker for following on Twitch. And okay, if you have just joined us, guys, we opened from the low jack and we're playing against the hijack, single raise pot, heads up, and we're playing 30 bigs effective. And I said that I would do a lot of checking on this board, so I did check, and our opponent bets small. And we go for the call. Like I think we have a backdoor flush draw. We have 2 overs. We definitely, this is a perfectly good candidate to go for a call. I think when I first started playing poker, I might look at this spot and think, well, I haven't got anything. Guy's betting, clearly got something, so we should go ahead and just fold. But I think that's the wrong way to approach this. Like he should be stabbing decent frequency, and against the range of hands that he would be betting small here, we just have enough equity and equity realization to be able to call out a position. So we did. We check, and the turn is the deuce of clubs, and he goes for another small bet. So the reason why I marked this hand is because I ended up folding. Oh no, I didn't. Let's rewind. The reason why I marked this hand was because this bet was so small. I did in game. I thought I had actually just gone ahead and folded. Maybe it's the river where things get a little bit more interesting. Let's just see what happens, and then I can give you some thoughts, because clearly this is a different hand from the one I was thinking about. Now, so we go for the call, and then on the river, he goes for a jam. So it's a pretty tasty hand. The river, I think, is a pretty easy decision, I think. But I think it's going to be really, really good to see, so if we, not calling here, what sort of hands are we calling? The mistake we're going to make, I think, is not checking enough on the flop. Really important to check. We'll see that in a minute. And then how we're going to play our range on the turn and the river to make sure that we've actually got some strong hands to be able to call here. So yeah, I think it's going to be really good to see. So let me just make a quick note of the cards, the deuce of clubs and the 9 of clubs. He goes small bet, and then overbet, jam. So fun hand. Yeah, I think looking back now, I think the reason I marked it was because on the turn, I didn't know whether we should call on the turn. I think the bet is small enough where we should. I also don't think a small bet from him on the turn is very good. I think he should be going for a big bet or check. So yeah, I think it's going to be good to see that. Evening to Evolution Retro Gaming on Twitch. So the first thing is very, very high frequency check, hardly any betting. So go for a range check. And then in position gets to do quite a lot of stabbing. Population probably not doing this much, but this is what their strategy is going to look like. So they went for a small bet, and we're supposed to continue with all ace queen off. So let's have a quick look at the EV. So you can see that when we have the heart, it's much better than when we don't, but we still have to continue, I think, without the heart. Ace jack off going to be much better with the heart. Again, let's have a look at the EVs. You can see now it's starting to drop down. So ace jack off without a heart, the EV is now red rather than amber or orange, depending on how you want to think about it. So yeah, definitely want to go ahead and call on the flop. We do have a decent amount of check raising going on here. So we did check range on the flop. So we're going to do some check raising with some overpairs here. Aces just goes for the check call. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, right, okay, we've got to think about the kind of hands we can actually call by the river. So maybe we do land on the river with aces, have a little bit of nines. Shout out to Rallycast for the follow on Twitch. We might have some like 9x of hearts or spades to get there. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting for sure to see what it looks like. See what other hands we can raise it. Some 6x going to play pretty similar to some overpairs here, I guess. Although sevens is just going for a check call. Shout out to Pika79 for the follow on Twitch. Okay, so yeah, just having a look at some other hands, doing a lot of folding, without hearts. We need to have decent spades in order to call. Thanks a guy called Danny for the follow on Twitch. And then with these offsuit hands, just similar to ace queen, ace jack, we want to have a heart in our hands to either raise or call with, and we just let go of everything else. So you can see like king of spades, 10 of diamonds just goes for a fold. King of hearts, 10 of diamonds going for a mix between raising and calling. Although the EV on this won't be particularly high. King of hearts, 10 of diamonds, 14.4. I'd still go for it, I think. So this is what our range looks like for going for the check call. We see the 2 of clubs on the turn. So sometimes when you're thinking about playing out of position when the turn card pairs, this is very different from after defending in the big blind. So if we face a small bet when on this board out of position, we're absolutely loving it because it's really not a spot where we should be facing a small bet, given that we have a lot of 2-pair plus type hands in the big blind. But in this situation, we don't have hands like 4-3 and 6-5 off and stuff like that. So we also don't have too much 2x, which the big blind would have. All right, so just about making sure that you're not confusing the two ideas, two concepts. All right. So yeah, I don't think if we have a look at the runouts comparison, let's have a look, that we're going to do much leading on a paired called 6-5 or a deuce, right? Because we just don't have as many of those. So I think, yeah, it's interesting to see that we do actually do some leading on ace-x and some king-x. I guess we have like a lot of those overcards with a heart, right, that we talked about before. So that's really interesting to see. I think that's a pretty big takeaway. But yeah, just make sure you're not confusing the two. Sorry, you guys can't see this. See if I can make it smaller. Okay, yeah. So we're doing some leading on an ace-x and yeah, not so much on those pair of 6-5 or a deuce. Okay, Albert on YouTube's got some questions. What about check calling hands like ace queen off on the board, similar to this one, but without the backdoor straight? Yeah, I'd still be backdoor straight. I don't think we have a backdoor straight draw here, right? So the board is 6-5 deuce. So 4-3 is going to complete the straight that's on the board. So yeah, maybe it's just maybe you've misread the board or something. I'm not sure. Example 9-7 2 tone or something like that. I think versus a small bet, I think we want to be continuing with ace queen there as well. I do think you're always just going to be better off having that backdoor flush draw in there. So like having a heart when there's 2 hearts on the board. When population stab less, probably we should fold those on the flop versus random or fish. Yeah, I think that's a very fair exploit. That going for, folding a little bit more frequently. So maybe in this situation, ace queen off without a heart. Maybe you meant that like the backdoor flush draw rather than the backdoor straight draw. yeah, we could start folding some like ace jack off without heart a lot more frequently. I think ace queen is just still a little bit too strong, and I still want to call and force my weak opponent to find a double barrel or a triple barrel in this spot. Okay, so we checked, and I said earlier I didn't think the small bet was a thing, and you can see it's not being used really at all. It's mainly this 70% pot or big bet. So if we gave it 70% and 80 or 80% or 75%, this number would be very, very similar. So yeah, kind of surprised to see this small bet. So now we have to sort of look at it and go, well, it's not a line that the solver is going to use very often, if at all. Or so we're going to be going down a branch of the game tree that's not often traveled. But also, like we can approach it in terms of frequency, right? So we need to be defending a lot of the time here versus a small bet. And you can see we're only folding 22%, which means continuing 78% of our range. So ace queen off is definitely in there. And I think my question earlier on was, are we definitely supposed to call with ace queen in this spot? And you can see that we are. But yeah, we have to find 78% of hands, right, of our range to call here. Now, going back to the whole exploit thing, I think that there's certainly an argument for overfolding. But I think the problem with overfolding here, if you don't think they're going to stab wide enough, you don't think they're going to double barrel wide enough, is that you're massively overfolding on a huge assumption that they're not going to be betting a bluff enough. When they're not taking this line, like they shouldn't be using the small size in the first place on the turn. So I think that taking the frequency-based approach and making sure that you are defending appropriately on this turn just makes like their life so much harder and forces them to find some bluffs that they probably won't. And I think that you could definitely find some overfolds on the river. But I think facing such a small bet, we want to be continuing fairly frequently. Let's see what our strategy looks like. Let's just make this a bit smaller. Hopefully you guys can see that. Just want to make sure you guys can. Let me know in the chat if it doesn't work properly. So let's have a look. Strategy. We don't have any quads. Full house, then we would go for a raise at this point, and trips, going for a check call. Over pairs. So now we, if we do land at this spot, we are going to be we're going to be raising the these over pairs if we'd gone for a check call on the flop, but a lot of these are getting raised on the flop anyway. Sevens just going for a check call again, which I think is really, really interesting. A lot of the time when we see like the first over pair, it's the one that's played most aggressively, but that's certainly not the case in this situation. So I think that's really good to see. Ace is just going for a check call as well. So yeah, very, very interesting. Queens and kings, decent amount of calling there as well. Top pair, a lot of calling, some raising with king six. Second pairs, so we have some 5x. So I'm always like, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about the future, like how are we going to find enough hands to call on the river when he overbet jams. Ace highs, decent amount of ace highs here. We have some draws in here, flush draws and straight draws, and then ace queen plus looks like it's going for the call. It's not, it's not amazing, but it's I would be calling with ace queen and then starting to let go of ace jack. I think the EV is starting to be very, very poor. King highs, then we're going to need to have the draws, playing aggressively with some hearts in here as well. Nothing type hands. Yeah, these are all going to be some kind of draws or two overs. So the weaker ones are just going to get folded now if we had floated them on the flop. But then these other ones are going to get continued. But I think it's it's played pretty aggressively. It's a decent amount of folding, calling and raising. So all options are available. Calling, then we're going to have some combo draws. So interestingly, there's some 9x in here, thinking about the 9 on the river. So yeah, I think we want to be aware of that. Also, we have 8-7, so the 9 gets there, we improve to a straight on the river. So yeah, I think that's good to see. Some flush draws, again, that will have some 9x in them, but not a huge amount. You can see it's only 10 combos, so we would have played those more aggressively on the flop, I think. And then we have the better ones up here, and there is like ace-9 suited to call. AR straight draws we already looked at, and the gut shots, some 9x that we're playing aggressively, gut shots with the spades, most common hand that we would get to here in terms of gut shots, and then 4s, 3s, ace-4 and ace-3 too. Okay, so it gives you sort of a breakdown of what we're looking at in terms of check calls. Aiki Akio says, does in position have some 8s and 9s? Let's just have a quick look. Yep, they do. And they, in fact, they have a little bit of aces, kings, queens, jacks, 10s, and 10s as well. So yeah, that's probably, you know, the reason why 7s becomes more of a call. And you know, if we think about they're betting 5s and 6s, but then there's all these pairs that are better, then we, you know, need to be aware of that. All right. Okay, so let's raise a small bet, and we went for the call, and then the 9 of clubs then on the river. No leading for us. Don't think things change that much. We have a lot of like ace, king, ace, queen up here. We're going to have aces, 7s. We're going to have some 6x, 5x in this spot. Comment from Albert. He said that it makes sense to still call versus the third pot, but if we are facing a bigger bet, we for sure fold. Yeah, okay, let's just have a quick look at that. So versus the big bet, you can see that ace queen off starts folding. I would fold all of these. Honestly, look at the EV; it's really, really poor. So yeah, you're spot on with that. He goes on to say, I think you're overthinking on a $30 buy-in or something versus a kind of random. They probably see hands, click third pot button, and that's all. Yeah, maybe. I'm gonna, you know, use their sizing to help me develop a, you know, a solid strategy for continuing, and using the solver to help us do that. So I think it's really good to do this still. William, what if they take the reverse psychology line and check raise versus a third pot bet? They wouldn't be able to check raise versus a third pot bet because they're in position. So I'm not sure if you realize that. So we're playing out of position, low jack versus hijack, 30 big blinds deep on a 6-5 deuce board. Paddy on Twitch saying, betting 5s and 6s because we have a full house. Let's yeah, did I say okay, I can't remember what I were you talking about? I'm not sure what I said now. maybe I misspoke and didn't realize that 6s and 5s was a full house, but maybe I'm not sure. Okay, so we call, and yeah, the 9 of clubs then on the river. We go for a check, and you can see, which I think is really nice to see. So the options are, I would have given the solver, obviously can check, bet half pot, bet 90%, but if that 90% is over a threshold, then it will just choose the all-in bet instead. And you can see that there's a lot of, it just goes for the jam or check in this spot, and is going to have some bluffs and some value hands as well. So yeah, I'd class all of these as value jams, I think. So when they do jam, what kind of hands do we get to call? Well, we know that we had the aces, a little bit of these over pairs as well. We have 8s, 7s calling a little bit of the time. 8-7 obviously because we have a straight. 9x we are going to be calling because we have top pair and we're, you know, pretty high up at this point. And then we've got some bluff catchers here, ace-6 and ace-5, ace-deuce as well, trips. That's, you know, important reason to go for a check call on the turn rather than raising this hand. Start folding 3s and 4s, 7s probably most of the time. The EV on a lot of these bluff catchers is not going to be great. So like 7s, 4s, 3s, pretty dusty to be honest. Yeah, so I think like these amber calls are going to be good against someone who you think is capable of, you know, small bet, overbet jam. But I guess now the question is, now it's a very strange line. Like, why are they suddenly going for a big bet? So again, like, you can take the frequency based approach, making sure that you're calling, as you can see in this spot, wants you to call with 37% of hands. You are going to have some strong hands still to call, like the trips, like the overpairs and stuff like that. But you've got some bluff catchers in here as well, like blocking 6s and 5s, which is the most, you know, common hands that would, you know, potentially bet small on 2 streets and then suddenly go for the overbet jam. So yeah, I think these calls would be reasonable. All right, so I think that was a, you know, pretty fun hand to start us off. Just make sure you're not overfolding versus small bets, basically. But yeah, did I fold? Yeah, let's just make sure. Let's have a quick look. I'm not supposed to ever call here, right? No, okay, good. Okay, 1 second. Right, next one then. Pocket jacks. We're opening up for a min raise here. We've got some short stacks behind. And big blind calls. The flop is ace queen 4. This is a really high frequency c-bet board, but if there's one hand that we do find some checks with, I think it is going to be jack. So I ended up checking here. So I want to just check in the solver if that is the case, or whether we should just go ahead and just range bet here. And by range bet, I don't necessarily mean just going ahead and betting small with everything in your range, because there could be a mix of sizes here. But I think it's going to be really, really important to see what we're doing with this hand. So I did check back. Turn went check, check. I think checking the turn is good. I don't think we want to be betting now. I think we're still ahead of a lot of the hands that big blind would check here. We have some really good showdown value ahead of like 6x and 4x and any other kind of hands that he could have. I think he probably leads an ace a decent amount of the time. And but like, what are we really going to get value from? We get value from some combo draws, I guess. We get value from some like 6x of hearts, stuff like that. And then the 3 of spades on the river, and he goes for an overbet. So question to you guys, what do you guys do here? Are you calling or folding? Albert on YouTube says, can I ask also, are you doing these study streams one pre-week every Monday? Because first time for sure, I'll join next time. I do these study streams on Tuesday and Thursday, always at 6 o'clock, 60 minutes. So just an hour for, at 6 o'clock. So if that's something that you want to be part of, then be here. I don't know if they'll continue for past November. My goal was to see how they go and do two a week, and then the live play and explain on a Sunday for the whole of November, and see what you guys think. I do also have the Game Changer, my group coaching program, where we do webinars on a Monday. So if you're looking for something on a Monday, I do have paid group coaching. So definitely check out the website, MTTPOKERSCHOOL.com, for more info. Okay, let's have a look. So lots of good comments, guys. Ica Akio, probably bet range mostly 60% if 20 to 25 bigs, because the lack of ace-x versus later positions. Yep, I think that's good. Alcantaran is folding. Jacob says capped AF Grim. Yeah. Be really interesting to know like how high we are in our range here. Paddy's folding. Luck be a lady. Any notes on villain? Nope, no notes. PokerCAD call. Guy called Danny's folding. King's Ransom's calling. Ica probably have to call sometimes. Jack X doesn't really block bluffs. He's bluffing from the bottom up, so not much Jack highs. Like it. PokerCAD, no draw with hearts to go check, check. Isn't protecting an ace at that point. Jack wins probably 40% of the time. Evolution Retro Gaming, wouldn't be absurd to call with this combo. I'm blocking hearts, but in all honesty, I would only call if I had a very specific read on the villain. Trivial fold, to be honest. Cool. I like the really good comments, guys. I think these are all excellent. Let's have a look. Rather folding, but it's from experience. Albert says on YouTube, when you have an edge on the table, no need to take close spots with bluff catching and stuff like that. Yeah, I think these are all really, really good points. And I think that if this is like a really close spot, but it's a really soft tournament, it's really unnecessary. So I think Albert's absolutely right in this spot. So 6 of spades, 3 of spades. Let's have a look at this one. Nope, wrong board. Okay, so ace queen 4, lots of betting, big bet, small bet, check a little bit, and the hand that stands out with the most checking is jack. So not terrible to go for the check here, but I think you can just go ahead and bet small. What are we trying to achieve when we bet jacks here? We get some overcards like king x to start folding, I guess, and we just deny equity to some other hands. We do get value from some hands as well. You can see all the 4x calling here. You can also see there are some like gut shots that get called, and even some like king highs with a heart. So we get a ton of value still, and we get to deny equity. So yeah, there's some definite reasons for doing that. I did go check 6 of spades. I think this is really interesting. He does lead some ace-x now for a pretty big sizing, going for the overbet. But there are some checks too in here. So I said, I think, I believed that villain would start betting some ace-x now on the turn, but it's not the case, right? You can see, okay, bets a lot of them, but there are some checks as well. So really important not to just sort of like blanket statement like, I think I don't think he has an ace now at this point, because he can definitely still have an ace, as you can see. So he checks, and we just go for pure check back. Now we have some showdown value. So it looks to me like we played the hand well up to this point. 3 of spades. Okay, so the sizing that he chose was this one that hardly ever gets used. So it's going for like 3/4 pot or 1.75x. So versus the 1.75x, you can see Jacks does call a little bit of the time, but the EV is really, really low. So we'd only be calling to try and prevent our opponent from, over bluffing. The sizing that they chose was this one. And Jacks calls a little bit more, but the EV is, minus. So I wouldn't be looking to call with Jacks in this spot. But having looked at it, like, where are we finding the calls then? If we're going to play like this. And you see, if I think actually the better way to play this hand is just to go ahead and c-bet the flop, because otherwise you just, have a decent chunk of Jacks and then a few sort of Queen X type hands to go for a call. So let's see where we're trying to find some calls. Ace 3 improves, but again, like 0.1 combos, top pair, 0.3 combos. We're going to have some ace-x to call. They seem really easy. Kings, if we decided to check back, but we just don't have many combos of kings. Second pair, so this is where we're going to find, I guess, most of our calls. We'll have a look at the EV on a queen in a minute. Third pair's now just like really dusty, not happy to call that at all, and all the others are just going to be folds. So let's have a look at the calling with a queen. Seems reasonable, but I suppose again, like, we're down a branch of the game tree that's not often used, so we would, in a game theory environment, want to call with Jacks around half of the time. But, you'd want a really solid reason to want to do that this player is definitely capable of recognizing that we're massively capped and is attacking us in that sense. So actually the best sizing he can choose is this big bet. Amazing to see the 1.75x pot bet being used. Maybe even that looks like 2x pot actually. So yeah, I think it's 2x pot is being used with king queen. Because you can still get value from these Queen X hands, right? And some of these other bluff catchers. So pretty amazing to see the solver do that. I don't think population is going to do that. But also, like, there are some really huge bets with an ace here as well. So I think the biggest learning point here is from out of position's point of view on these kind of boards where your opponent's supposed to bet a lot on the flop. When they do go for a check twice, you get to absolutely bomb it with like king, queen and better. Okay, King's Ransom 82, bet flop to deny flush and straight equity and to see where you stand. Yes, see bet flop. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the whole idea of like seeing where you're at kind of bets. I always want to have a much better reason for doing that. But if that's the way you approach it, then you do you for sure. We did fold. We didn't make some hero call and beat like 10-7 of diamonds or something. Okay, so here we open with pocket fours, the button flats, and the board comes Jack 8-8. Let me know in the chat, guys, what are you guys doing here? Going for a bet or a check? And if you bet, what size are you betting on this kind of board? Okay, so Jacob is going for a check out of position. Alcantara going for a check call. This is one of those hands where I feel like I massively butchered it, so you get to learn from my mistake. Okay, so lots of votes for check, basically, which I think is correct in hindsight. For whatever reason in game, I decided to bet. I think if you watch the stream from Sunday, I probably said something along the lines of, this player is, not very good, and I think that this will just clean out equity. Like, he might not even defend as wide as he's supposed to, with lots of ace highs, lots of like king high with a backdoor flush draw, queen high with a backdoor flush draw, that kind of stuff. And if he starts folding those hands, then it's a pretty big win for us by betting here. But I think against a good player, you don't want to be doing this. I think it's probably going to be a check at, I don't know, 80 or 90% of the time, maybe even more. Okay, but he does call. 6 of hearts on the turn, goes check, check. Jack of clubs on the river, we get counterfeit, and in game, I said that I don't think I ever get ace high to fold. I do think this is potentially an amazing spot to go for a 2x pot river jam. So we'll see if the solver agrees. But yeah, again, like, I just thought that he wasn't going to fold an ace to that size, even though he probably should. So I decided to bet a small size because I think that king high, queen high, 10 high, can't call. So I went for, I guess, quarter pot. So like a hand like 10-9, that actually beats us, can't call. And some other hands that I just mentioned as well, queen high, king high too. I think an ace is just always calling, so we're not trying to get that hand to fold. But yeah, just give me your thoughts on what you think about this line. Trying to get those slightly better hands to call that can't in this spot. Albert saying maybe we could barrel this hand to fold him out from ace highs, broadways, etc. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why I chose to bet the river. Maybe you're talking about betting the turn as well. I think that's a reasonable idea. There shouldn't be too much of a delay here. So I'm not sure if that question came in as immediately after I asked the question. So yeah, that's I don't know what the delay's like. Okay, he called and had an ace. So Paddy on Twitch saying, if I'm in villain shoes, I'm folding ace high to a river jam. Yeah, it's a grim spot for sure. Ica saying tough spot, I would probably bet large or check this. Yeah, I think maybe large bet is better. I just think that he's going to be inelastic with an ace unless we go for like the huge bet. So if we go for like 80%, I think he's just going to find a hero call. If we go for the jam and put his tournament life on the line, I think he then won't be inelastic, right? He's going to start folding some of them. Let's have a look. Evolution Get Your Gaming. I think if we're taking a betting line on the flop with this hand, we have to continue. Are you talking about on the turn or on the river? Alcantara saying, when I have been in this spot, the villain always pays with an ace. Okay. Yeah, and we're not, like, when we bet this small, we're not trying to get an ace to fold. That's not the idea, right? We're trying to get the slightly better hands than our hand to fold. Whether that's like 9-7, 10-9, queen 9, queen 10, king X with a backdoor flush draw, like those kind of hands are going to like not be great calls for him in this spot, I would say, because I just don't think that people perceive the small block to be a bluff very often, and I think it's a really nice place to use it. But we'll see. I mean, the solver might just say it's dreadful, so we'll see very shortly. DAX8P. If you bet flop, you should bet turn also to deny equity from hands like 8-7 and 10-9. Well, 8-7 is trips. I guess you mean like 9-7. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, those hands don't fold, and then we're in a really funky spot on the river trying to get those hands to fold. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that. You did correct yourself to 9-7. I do apologize. So Evolution says turners will start to fold the ace-x, etc. Yeah, okay. Well, let's put this into the solver and see what it says. Okay, so the first butcher of the day was to actually go ahead and bet the fours in the first place. So it's a really high frequency check once again. So it's a really big learning point on this board. Jack 8-8, playing 25 bigs effective. We want to start, we want to do a lot of checking. We bet, just want to see what kind of hands he continues. So you can see he's got some overpairs. He's going to have Jack X and 8X and some straight draws and some pairs that don't fold. So I guess, getting a little bit of value from 3s and 2s maybe. But a lot of these hands are going to continue. 8x with a backdoor flush draw. I think, yeah, in game I felt like he was going to start folding more of these like king x with a backdoor flush draw. So maybe if that's the case, there's a slight disconnect here between flop and river, because if I want these hands to fold because I feel like he's not good enough and he's going to just overfold these, well, these are exactly the kind of hands we're trying to target on the river, right? So that doesn't make too much sense if this is our target on the river. So yeah, I told you I butchered this hand, guys. But just make sure there's not a disconnect between the flop and the river and the ideas. Queen 9, I think we can target on the river as well. 10-9, 9-7. We talked about all of these hands. Thinking back, it'd be good to to go and listen back to the stream. But I think I also talked about trying to get some underpairs to fold on the river. I don't think these hands can call. They'll just be, well, they'll be seven high. It'd be like jacks and 8s with a 7 kicker. Like I just, yeah, I don't think he does anything with those hands. So there's, there is some hands that we can get to fold that are better in that sense as well. Okay, got to be careful when we bet small. Too easy to bet too much with these small pairs. Yeah, exactly. So there's a little bit of small betting going on here, a little bit of big betting, and lots of checking. So definitely, I'm going to say I made a mistake here. Like, this is why we study. This is why we want to get better. But for you guys, you get to see my mistakes and learn from those, so you don't need to. I have seen lots of follows come in, guys. I really appreciate that. We are approaching 2,100 followers, so thanks so much for the follows, guys. Okay, so he called, and then we had 6 of hearts and the jack of clubs. Okay. So 6 of hearts, I think lots of you suggested going for it on the turn again. Doesn't look like it is. If we do bet somehow, I mean, if we take out this, we have hardly any 4s anyway, but it doesn't look like it wants to go ahead and continue here. I guess we're going to have better hands to barrel, just with a little bit more equity, but still getting better hands to fold. So sort of those hands, that if you think about it logically, we're trying to get like ace high and king highs to fold, right, to deny equity against those hands, but we're still ahead of those hands, apart from when it comes like a 6 or a jack on the river, or obviously they improve to a pair. But with queen high, we are not ahead of a lot of those hands. So the way I'm looking at this right now makes me think that we are betting a lot more of these hands here, because we can get those ace high type hands to fold, as you can see here. I think population's going to way overfold here versus the second bet. Can you show our response when we face a third pot stab on the flop? Yep. We definitely check calling with 4s and not folding very much at all. I could say, and also important to have an over to the jack. Absolutely. Love that point. Great point. Okay, so it was the 6 of hearts. Let's go back. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's any double barreling, but more so with, as you said, overs or, a gut shot, something along those lines. Okay. So here, I mean, even bluffing with king queen with 2 overs as well. It looks like it's betting maybe slightly more with a heart, but it is pretty close actually. There's some king queens in this bottom corner that are bet without a heart at high frequency. Anyway, so it went check, and then we see the jack of clubs on the river. Okay, cool. So we're not a million miles away on the river, deciding to bet this hand. Which combo did we have? Let's see. 4 of clubs, 4 of diamonds. So 4 of clubs, 4 of diamonds prefers to go for the bigger bet, which is probably 3/4 pot. So that's really interesting to see. So let's see what we're trying to achieve by betting big. We get lots of, well, ace highs now become indifferent. A lot of these ace highs are going to start folding. Ace 7, ace 5, and ace 4, I think are going to start folding because they block hands like 4s, 5s, and 7s that we end up bluffing. As you can see, 4s, 5s, and 7s. So I think that's why those hands are starting to fold. King highs just all folding. Population's never, ever, ever finding these bluff raises. Jack X obviously, is a boat. They're always going to find those. 6s just goes for a call. So these ace highs, I think, would also start fold over. Would they start overfolding? It's an interesting one to think about. King queen off, I don't think finds some sort of bluff on this river. You tell me, guys, are you finding this this bluff with king queen off on the river versus a big bet? I think it's I think it's reasonably good. It blocks hands like king jack and queen jack, but yeah, I just don't think population is doing that. So yeah, we ended up going for this small bet, which is a little bit of aces, some fours, fives, stuff like that. It doesn't make sense. So we get sevens to fold, fives to fold, which is what I was talking about before. We can get some king highs to fold. So I don't mind it. Like we seem to be getting quite a few of these hands to fold, exactly the kind of hands we wanted to fold. Really interesting to see that 10-9 actually start, calls sometimes in this spot. So two pair with a 10 kicker. Yeah, that is really fascinating against the small size. I think population again would fold that. So I don't think they'll fold an ace. So I don't think they would fold like ace 7 here, ace 4. I think they would just, flick it in. But I think they would fold the 10-9 and the queen 9 that gets, called. Queen 9 of diamonds gets called. I just don't think that's happening at all. King 9, like it's not getting raised. Yeah. So I think queen 10 off, no way. So I think we could node lock this and take some of these hands out. And I think the betting small then with fours is going to make a lot more sense. And you can see 4 of spades, 4 of diamonds quite likes the small river bet. So I don't think it's unreasonable to go for this sizing. It just didn't work out this time. But lots to take away, I think, from this hand. Mainly, don't butcher the flop. Really important to get the flop right. Yeah, just to show you, he had ace 9 of clubs. Okay, so this is the final hand we're going to look at. We open from the cutoff with 10-9 off, small blind calls, big blind calls. And so we're going to be using simple three-way for this. I don't think I've used simple three-way yet on the stream. So it'd be good to have a look at that, show you how that works in a minute. Let me show you the hand. So first of all, my question for the solver, and this is something that you always want to be thinking about, is having questions for the solver before you go into it. Now, yeah, I would say we went down a few rabbit holes with the PIO analysis there. With this analysis, we want to make sure that we have very clear questions to answer. And they can be simple questions like, what are we doing with our exact hand? What are we doing with the value portion of our range? Do we ever do any checking with like 2 pair plus? Those sorts of questions. Really try to sort of think about it in terms of your whole range. But you also want to see like, what does your strategy look like in this spot? So I went for the bet, big blind calls. Turn is the jack of diamonds, and something else I want to look at in the solver for is to see, is this a spot where out of position is going to do a decent amount of leading like they would in a heads up pot, or not, because it was multi-way and therefore their range is not containing as many weak hands. They do have to start overfolding, I think, although they do close the action, so yeah, maybe not. Be interesting to see. But anyway, he went for the check, and then we have a decision between betting and checking. I think in game, I think you could probably do either, but again, we want to know what we're supposed to be doing on the river. And let me just make a note of these cards. And then he goes for the pot on the river. So I think this is a really interesting spot because we have improved to a straight, but we lose to a boat and a flush. And the reason I marked this was because I don't know whether or not we get to jam on this river or we just get to call. In game, I did just go for a call. And I think it's very easy when you when you see what he has, to then be very results orientated and go, okay, yeah, I probably could have jammed and I could have got a lot more out of him, right? Because he ends up having jack 6 off. But I think that's a poor way to study. I think you really want to be looking at it from, don't just look at his hand and say, okay, well, I probably, against his exact hand, I could have, I could have doubled up here. Yeah, I think that's quite poor. So we want to see in the solver, like maybe it is a jam, but maybe it's also just a call. So we'll have a look now. Okay, so this is a simple three-way. And just reading some of the questions. Okay. Lotby lady, is this the same guy pot betting river after you check turn? How do you mean? Same guy as what? I'm a little bit confused by the question. It's the same hand where it's this hand, right? Queen, Jack, 7, multi-way pot from the flop. We bet small, he calls. Jack goes check, check. And the river is this. Same as the first hand. Maybe. Let's have a look. First hand. No, that was this guy. Was that what you were asking, right? Or was it maybe the jacks? Yeah, it's a different guy. Okay, so was it this one? I think this is probably this one that you were asking about. Okay, let's go back to 10-9 off. Go back to solver. Okay, so on the Queen Jack 7 board, you can see that out of position actually, this is the small blind, gets to do some leading with the hands that you can see in kind of a pinky salmony color. When he checks, big blind just does a lot of checking, as they would normally do on a Queen Jack 7 board. I don't think you're going to see much leading heads up button versus whatever position we were in this spot cutoff. And then we have a decision with 10-9. So I wrote down the question like, what are we doing, with 10-9 off? And you can see that all options are available. We can check, we can bet small, or we can bet big. And so I think it's good to, again, do the analysis that we did before in PIO. You can do exactly the same thing in simple 3-way. So sets always getting bet, although queens, there's a little bit of checking going on. 2 pairs always betting. I asked you the question earlier on, what are we doing with our value hands? Are we ever doing some checking? And there's a tiny amount of sets and 2 pairs that are getting checked, but really I would just go for a value with those. Overpairs mainly going for a bigger bet here. The 2 sizes that I chose was quarter pot and half pot. And the reason why I chose half pot and not anything like 2/3 or 3/4 or anything like that is because on the flop, we're playing effectively against this guy, 24 big blinds. Now, if we were going to go bet the same size of the pot as a big size against the small blind, we would go half pot on the flop, half pot on the turn, half pot to jam the river. So I think that's the best way to approach it. And if we bet half pot as a big sizing against the big blind, we then just have to size up for the turn because we're then playing 30 whatever big blinds effective against the big blind. So yeah, going for a slightly bigger bet then with the overpairs and top pairs, mixing sizes, betting a lot. There's some, starting to do some checking now with Queen 8, Queen 6, Queen 5. Second pairs, decent amount of betting. Third pairs, a lot more checking. Weak pairs, pure check. And then we've got ace highs, king highs, and stuff like that. That we'll have a look in draws, see what's going on there. So open-ended straight draws. 10-9 off then, we get to do some mixing. 10-9 suited is the same thing. King 10 suited, always betting, sometimes for a big size. King 10 off, doing some mixing for all options. Bet small, bet big, and check. Okay, gut shots, doing a bit of everything. Ace king off looks like it's going for a high frequency check here. King 9 off though, going for a bet. 10-8 suited, going for a bet, for a big bet all the time. And yeah, you can see, I don't have to talk you through all of these guys. Yeah, backdoor flush draws, I don't think we need to worry too much about those. So overall then, I don't know if you guys can see that maybe if I just pull this up a little bit. Checking 35%, betting small 33%, betting big, the biggish, like the big size half pot in this spot 32% of the time. So yeah, all options are available. Let's now go, we bet small, player 1 folds, and player 2 calls with these kind of hands. And there's not a lot of raising going on here. We're only raising 3% on this board. Calling with all Jack X, 7X, Queen X, continuing with Ace X with a backdoor flush draw, continuing with any kind of piece of the board, so whether that's a pair or a gut shot, stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's just really good to see, but just very straightforward. Like you guys know this, you know, the kind of hands that your opponent would call in this spot. Okay, so on the Jack of Diamonds, the question I had was, is this a spot where they start leading? And there are some leads here, but it's really not that much, like 3%, even though they call with a decent number of Jack X here. And again, shout out to all the guys that have followed today. We're at 2,093 followers, so we might be able to get to 2,100 by the end of the stream. So if you haven't hit the follow button on Twitch yet, hit the follow button on Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, head over to Twitch and follow, but also hit that subscribe button if you want. And if you are enjoying it today, then on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Okay, so yeah, not a lot of leading, which is a good question to answer. So then we have the option between small bet, geometric sizing, which would be the big bet, and check. So check, small bet, and big bet. And you can see that it's really just checking and big betting. The small betting is really going to come from pocket jacks and sort of a few other hands here and there, but mainly going for the big. Yeah, you guys can see this, right? Big bet and check. So what hand did we have? 10-9 off. And you can see that, remind myself what combo we had. 10 of hearts, 9 of spades, which is this one. And you can see that we're mixing again, checking or betting big. Question here, how did you input geometric sizing? Was it manually? Yeah, so you can set it up to do frequencies, like when you put in your bet sizing options here. But then because this program runs street by street, you don't have to set it up before and then just let it run. When it came to here, I was just able to edit the node and choose a different bet size, as you can see here. Hope that helps. So yeah, I just worked out what the geometric sizing was and input that instead for the bigger bet size. Okay. So yeah, we can mix, but yeah, I went for a check. Let's just see if we did go for the big bet. What kind of hands are we trying to get to fold? Well, similar hands to ours, I guess. Some weaker draws, King 10, King 9. Jack X obviously never folding. We get some ace-X without a backdoor flush draw to start folding now. So like a6 of hearts, a6 of spades that called from the flop. Some 7x starts folding as well, which is great to see. These underpairs start to fold too. We're never getting a queen to fold, so don't worry about that. Queen and jack, we're not targeting, but you know, lots of other hands to get folds from. So sometimes when I'm doing this kind of analysis, I get a bit of pushback, and it's like, yeah, but no one's playing like this. You know, this is why are we looking at this? But I think this is such an amazing way to visualize how ranges interact and what you should be doing on from both players' point of views, right? Or even three players' point of views if we're doing three-way spots. So yeah, I think just having that visual, like being able to visualize this away from the table and saying to yourself, okay, so when I'm betting here, and I can actually get all of these hands to fold. These hands are supposed to fold. They're really poor calls. Like if your opponent ends up calling with these hands, like there's not a lot you can do about that. But you know, just know that if you're playing really well in this kind of strategy, that your opponent's going to lose money in the long run by making some minus EV calls. Okay. So yeah, that's great to see. I went check, and on the river, how much of this big betting is used? 11% for this 10.8 big. So we've got a block for like third pot ish, 30% probably. We've got the pot size bet, and we've got an all in. So all in not going to be used. So it's between, well, lots of checking, as you can see, lots of green, and then some small betting and some big betting. And they did go for this big bet, and we wanted to see on the river whether or not we get to jam 10-9 off. And if we don't get to jam 10-9 off, what kind of hands do we get to jam? And you can see 10-9 off, we had 10 of hearts, 9 of spades. Is that right? 10 of hearts, 9 of spades. Pure call. So calling with all the 10-9 offs in this spot. So I think that's really, really good to see that our hand is, you know, strong. We have a straight, but versus this huge bet, we only get to call. I do think this is a fascinating hand. Kind of hands we get to jam, but really, I mean, hardly any combos now. Straight flush if we have it. flushes if we have it, and full house if we have it, we get to jam. I think that should be fairly obvious for everybody watching that we get to do that. And then when it comes to straights, we get to jam the nut straight, but only call the second nut straight or the non-nut straight. Trips we're going to call, but again, like really tiny number of combos, if any at all. So yeah, the idea here really is we have a full house, obviously we can jam. If we have trips, we're just going to call. If we have the bottom end of the straight, we're just going to call. If we have the top end, we get to jam. If we have a flush, we get to jam. If we have a straight flush, we get to jam, obviously. So yeah, hopefully that helps you see that hand in a little bit more detail. And as I said, I just went for the call. I didn't think our hand was strong enough to go for a jam, but I probably wouldn't have in-game jammed a hand like ace-10 here. But I would have been very happy to jam a flush or a boat. Trips, I don't think we would have had many trips to check back. You can see, I mean, the solver didn't had hardly any jack-X to call on the river because it would just bet the turn, right? So yeah, we have like we have no trips. So yeah, boats and flushes we feel very happy with, straight flushes, and yeah, anything less than that we just have to go for a call. ANCAP saying we have no bluff check raise on the river. Bluff, well, we're in position, so we can't bluff check raise, but let's just see if we have any bluff raises. So there's a little bit here, right? Tiny amount of like king 10 off. Let's have a look here. King of hearts, 10 of diamonds. So using the diamond blocker, looks like it. If we just sort by played, yeah, you can see the 10 of diamonds is being used as a bluff like a little bit of the time in this spot. I think that's pretty cool to see. Let's see if there's anything else that's similar to that. Ace queen off with the ace of diamonds, so there are some bluffs going on here as well. So that, yeah, there's some definite bluffing. King 10 off with a diamond, ace queen off with the ace of diamonds. Like, yeah, I think it was a great question, ANCAP, to try and find us some bluffs in this spot. Ace 7 off, then blocking pocket sevens. We get to do some raising with the diamonds, again blocking 7x of diamonds, which I guess we would no, they could definitely have for floating the flop, right? Cool. That's really, really good. I think this is very much one of those spots where it can be difficult to find bluffs, and if you're in the out of position shoes, you bet big and get jammed on, you're going to massively overfold because you're like, nah, there's no way population finds enough bluffs here. So I think it's definitely a spot where if you can find them, you could generate more EV, because people are just going to get super scared that you just have a boat or a flush or something here. All right. Let's just before we finish, if we did jam, is the guy supposed to call with all of his jack-X? He shouldn't be leading many of the jack-X. You can see here there's just not a lot of them left. But you can see that he folds a lot of jack-X here. So I don't even think, even if we thought, okay, I think he's going to call of his, we can jam for value here because jack-X calls. Well, I'm not sure it does. And therefore, all that's going to happen is we're just going to get called by better hands. And therefore, we're not really making a plus EV jam in this spot. So that's pretty interesting. Let's just go back and have a look at his range. Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that a lot of these jack-X hands just go for the check as well. Jack-8 is going for a big bet, and some of these other jack-X hands as well. So yeah, he had jack-6 off actually, didn't he? So that does go for a big bet sometimes when he has the 6 of diamonds. Is that what he had? If he has, then I'm going to say that this guy's using some sort of real-time assistance. Let's have a look. Okay, phew. We're not there yet. Good. So yeah, it doesn't look like jack-6 off gets bet when it doesn't have the diamond. But yeah, if that did happen and we raised, then okay, good. So jack-6 off does actually get called when it bets here. So what? yeah, but again, it has to have the six of diamonds. So they're the only ones that are being bet at any frequency anyway. Probably for that reason, because they block, you know, the 6x of diamonds hands that we can have in this spot. Okay, guys, so that's going to wrap things up. If you haven't done so already, hit that follow button on Twitch. Shout out to you guys that followed today. Shout out to you guys as well for being here. Really appreciate you turning up, and hopefully you have learned something. If you haven't done so already, go over to MTTPOKERSCHOOL.com, check out the site, see if there's anything on there that interests you. So there's links to our socials like YouTube, Twitch, which you're already on, Instagram, Twitter, stuff like that. And yeah, definitely check out the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already for free strategy videos. You can watch the replays from all of the previous streams, certainly from the last couple of weeks, on Twitch and YouTube, so definitely check those out. And yeah, that's going to be it, guys. So I will see you on Thursday for more of the same, 60 minutes at 6. Until then, take care. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.